So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share highlights from the Premier Global Africa Forum on Communications held in Rwanda last month. I attended this conference with wonderful comms colleagues, Catherine Ndungu, who is the communications manager for JPICO Kenya. You will hear Catherine shortly. And Fernando Fidelis. Fernando is a senior communications officer in Mozambique. Fernando is not able to attend today, but we have his feedback that he shared earlier with us that I'm going to share. Well, oh, the presentation.
Charles, sorry to interrupt you. So we see your PowerPoint up there. I don't know if you, I'm assuming Cole has to advance it for you. So we're on the first main slide, so.
Yeah, I'm still there. I can see the presentation. I can see you, and I will be saying next, then we move to the next. So we just stay there on the cover. And as you can see that we are starting with a famous group photo that Gecko hates to take, right? But you know, we wanted to show you, you know, the smiling faces that signifies how the conference went. And you know, down there on the right, that's us on the opening day. That's me, there's Catherine, and there's Fernando. But what you see there was really a conference that brought together the who is who in communications, marketing, and PR in Africa, from the Ghana Minister for Information to the big brands, Old Mutual, which has worked in Africa for over 170 years, Coca-Cola, which has been around in Africa for 70 years, CEOs, directors, journalists, you know, activists, startups, and we were there representing JPICO. JPICO has been around in Africa for 45 years, so you know we must have been there. So the conference theme that you see there, Speak for Africa, New Narratives and Frontiers for Africa's Global Growth Story, focused on the opportunities for Africa as a continent, her nations, and the people, the friends and partners who are, you know, partner with Africa to write and paint a new, true narrative for the continent. So, you know, there were quite a bit of talk about the past, but everyone recognized that progress has been made in the continent. But the story has always remained the one story, the pre-colonial story, and you know, told by the world. So Africa has been missing out in telling their story. And there was even a provocative thought, like, you know, now there's a trend to recolonize Africa in the media space to keep that single story. So the opening speakers really set the stage with that provocative question of self-reflection, self-thinking, and talk that paved the way for frank and forward-thinking conversation around the following sub-themes. Can we go now to the next slide? Yes, you know, the next click. So, you know, this was really a forum of its own kind, because it started by thinking, how do you brand a country? How do countries like Rwanda, Kenya, you know, have managed to brand or rebrand themselves, given what has, you know, like Rwanda has gone through? And also, you know, the Ghana Minister for Information says, you know, Ghana, they have the can-do spirit, but how are they doing in branding that spirit? And how are countries making the case for foreign investment? And if they're actually saying they're capable to run their own economies, because this is like the system that is going out there. So countries are doing that, but maybe they're not telling the story straight. Also, as a reflection to us sitting in the conference and thinking together, we were also thinking, can JPICO countries also brand themselves? Like, you know, what do we have to, you know, say Tanzania, JPICO Tanzania, can JPICO Kenya, can JPICO Rwanda brand themselves in a way that they're attractive to a group that we are trying to target for? Or is that something that we have to brand just as JPICO? Is that something we have to think about? So those are the things that were coming to our mind, and as we went through the conference. The role of executives in shaping their firms, organization reputation, how to go about sensational media, and its coverage of the continent. Can we go to the next slide, next click? You know, NGOs, and we fall under there. That was an interesting talk, that what is our role? You know, we were being pegged by successful brands like Coca-Cola. The message there was like, look, Coca-Cola is a global brand. but it doesn't seem like it is coming from outside, right? You know, Coca-Cola is produced in the respective countries where it is being marketed. Are we doing the same? Non-profits like ourselves and civil societies seem to be, you know, sending the message of their financials. So that is how we are being seen. You know, people don't care you are an affiliate of Johns Hopkins, as long as you're a non-profit. You know, people in Africa think like you are out there to send the message of the funder. And, you know, perspectives on corporate communications also formed quite a bit of discussion. Can we go to the next clip? And yes, marketing and how can we actually seize on that. So those are were the themes that were discussed in the conference. And now I welcome my colleague, Catherine, to jump into the next slide.
Hi, everybody. Can you see me?
Yes.
Cool. I think because I'm using two screens, my video is somewhere here. Wait, sorry. So I think it was quite refreshing to see how people think about branding and rebranding and messaging in general. And some of the key things that came to play, and I sort of thought of summarizing them in sort of 3 quotes is, it's not what sells that matters, it's what people are willing to buy. And I thought about that deeply, and I was thinking about how do we make it matter what we are selling? How do we brand ourselves and sort of just make it matter to the people we want to hear us? And when you look at a time like this where it's a time where Jhpiego is suffering from, not really suffering, undergoing like major changes where we need to reposition ourselves. How do we rebrand ourselves? How do we message or put our messaging across so that donors, beneficiaries, and people who we're interacting with can have moments to care about our brand and keep purchasing us, really. The other thing that I got from this was also the idea of, are we courageous enough to guide our leaders to the point that they can build brands that can be trusted? And this was particularly very revealing to me because recently I was asked to develop a product for an annual conference. And in my mind, I thought, the kind of product we should do was very different from what I was being told to make. But there was such a big push from the project leadership to create what they wanted. And I don't know if it's the lack of courage. I don't think it's a lack of courage. Maybe sometimes it's just a lack of time. But I felt like I failed that project because I didn't direct them and I wasn't maybe courageous enough to say, this is what we should create. And so that moment was, I reflected on that a lot. How do you push back and say, this is what would actually work? Because the feedback I got after that was, had we done an emotional story, which is what I had gone for, it would have worked much better. I think the last thing was, have we suffered an identity crisis, perhaps of our own doing? Are we seen as makeup artists, people who make things look pretty? And how do we reposition ourselves as advisors, strategic advisors at this moment whereby we need to rebrand ourselves? And so these are some of the things that I got from that conference that I keep reflecting on and thinking about, and I hope that teams can think about and have a larger conversation around them.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you so much. Can we go on to the next slide? Yes, so these are the thoughts that Fernando shared, and you are going to be seeing tweets as well, because really we were very busy there, and Catherine can attest to that. It was an opportunity for us to also test how can you participate in a conference and be noticed by some new ways. We have social media, you know, and this is from Coles and Juliana kind of priming who are leading the social media. Sometimes you can be very active in a conference through social media, but then there was, especially during the conversation about NGO and what has happened in Africa, like we should actually, Africa should share the positives, the things that are happening, the things we're doing, agriculture, economies, and everything. And for us, our work that we're doing in Africa, but challenges are still there. So we have to balance our story, but not just only focus now, since we're saying, oh, we have to change the narrative, but problems are still there. We may need to tell a nuanced story that is very true. And there was so many PR firms and so many ideas on how you can use marketing strategies to kind of really move up the needle in terms of visibility. And for us and for others, it was saying, like, for us, for instance, at Gecko, communication shouldn't be that the work of Gecko only. It could be that we shouldn't shy away from deploying, marketing strategies, like firms that are able to do that to help us increase our visibility. And then the firms, this was me thinking, like, the firms that are seen to be well versed with Africa communications, like Coca-Cola, they kind of sell products. Maybe they've been able to do that and occupy the market in Africa and to be seen local. The Coca-Cola that is made in Kenya is not the one that made in Tanzania. So the Coca-Cola, which is global, but it's local. But how can we also do that to be seen as a household name in innovation that are saving lives? I think until when we reach that stage, we may start going away from that kind of thinking that we are seeing as propagating the ideas and what the founder tells us. Can we go to the next slide? So it came apparent, and this was now validation of what we are always saying. Communication is everyone's responsibility. And for us, we are all Jepaigo ambassadors, and we should make sure that at Gecko, this is like singing the song that we know. But how can we make others know that they are ambassadors, technical teams, the leadership? And there was this interesting quote that until when leadership treats communication just as they treat the finances, that's when we can move forward. And this is a cry we are always having with the countries and programs. Communication has already been put aside. In the last 10 years, things have improved, but still, we have to do a better job in there because employees are part and parcel of the organization reputation. We are hearing a lot of executive presence, but it was really refreshing to see and to know that that is what is happening with others in the continent as well. We go to the next slide. Yeah, so for us, closing insights, this was really wonderful, both as a networking opportunity to see all these players in Africa and to kind of network with them. We know now who to go to, but also to realize, oh, we are doing the right thing. We also have a lot of work to be doing. And also this of saying we have to really make headway in our communication. Africa is not a country. Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, Rwanda have all different stories, and probably that is something we also have to be thinking when we're doing our story. There was one good example from Old Mutual, how they did their rebranding. Their rebranding really made sure that it was different from country to country. We may have one brand, but that was something to think, and that we don't have to be the only ones telling our story. But next time we need to be on that panel. And my suggestion, our suggestion here, we can, identify some of the friendly communicating country directors in Africa to be in one of the panel to represent how are we going about our leadership in communications. Can you go to the last slide? And this is kudos for us from me, Catherine, and Fernando. We really thank Anne and Melody for your support. And there was one person to thank from Kenya, Geoffrey Njenga, who works with Catherine. He's the one who identified the conference and sent us to us. And so we say thank you so much. Asante sana.
Asante sana.